Okay, we're on Gerontology, chapter 14, Values and Beliefs. Okay, objectives develop understanding of the impact of personal values and beliefs on everyday life. Identify values and beliefs commonly found in today's older adult population. Discuss the impact of beliefs and values on the health practices of older adults. And develop an understanding of the relationship of values and beliefs to health practices. I already said that. Compare the spiritual practices of major religions as they relate to death. It's kind of interesting, and I don't know. We were making this uh, observation. I was with my niece and nephew, and they believed that whenever we had gone to church, and they had made an observation that all the old people, like there's a very vast gathering of older people in church, and they're all in the front row, way up in the front. And I said, why is it that so many old people go to church? I said, because they have to get right, right? I mean, it's coming to their end, and they want to make sure they're getting it right. If whatever their spiritual belief is, they want to make sure they're doing it and getting it and doing what they're supposed to do because the time might be coming sooner than it was for you, and because they're young. And he said, well, I mean, does it count? Of course it counts. I don't know. I guess it depends on your spiritual belief. I just thought it was kind of funny how as you get older, uh, the time comes when you start thinking, what do I need to do to get things right? And then church comes into play. But values and beliefs. Values and beliefs are uniquely human ideas that set us apart from other animals. Values and beliefs affect all aspects of our lives, including the experience of life and death and the way we understand and manage health. Many experts believe that most of our values are well established by the time we reach the age of 10 years old. Because people develop their values based on a unique combination of time, place, and experiences, no two people have the exact same beliefs and values. How may a person's values differ according to when they were born? Well, I mean, by the way, the snoring is my dog. So if you hear any noise in the background, that's Bella, who's the worst student because all she does is snore through my lectures. But anyway, how would you differ from being, I mean, whenever you're born, you have no basis of recognition of differentiality. You're still learning, you're still taking in information, you're still understanding. So our values are going to be completely different, even from the age of 5 to 10, because you've had more life experience and been exposed to more, so you have more insight of what to believe or what your values may be. All right, so values and beliefs develop in the context of a person's unique sociocultural environment. Misunderstanding and conflict often occur when people with two different or contradictory sets of values interact. Okay, so I mean, there are ways to embrace differences. However, if your values completely differentiate from another person's values, it's going to be really difficult to come to a common ground. And I think that's kind of what the conflict is. If I believe something is wrong and some people believe that there's gray areas or it's not, and I can't see past my own thoughts process to be open-minded to see what another person may be able to see, it might build up conflict. Do you see how that might? And it's not from lack of being open-minded. It's just your experiences have molded you to the belief system that you have. For instance, if you have somebody who has gone through a traumatic experience, they're going to be pretty strict about, let's say, like I had a friend who was held up in a store by gunpoint. She was working in retail and they got robbed. So she's going to have a very black and white perception of being held up on gunpoint. It's wrong. It's awful. It's the most terrible experience of her life. She has post traumatic stress from it, and it's understandable. But as somebody who doesn't, and you kind of wonder, well, why would somebody, what brought somebody to the point where they felt they needed to hold someplace up by gunpoint to get money? You know, would she be able to, at her point in her life and her experiences, be able to expand, or does she even care? No, flat out. That's her perception. That's her belief system. It doesn't matter. There's no reason to ever do that. And that is where the conflict would come in, is that if you've never had that happen to you, you might be a little bit more lenient to someone who has. And these are what I'm talking about, is how our life experience, our social cultural environment mold us in our belief system and maybe have us, it takes a really, strong person to go through that, but it would take an even stronger person to be able to overcome that and say, okay, well, what was the purpose of this, you know? And that's a whole different topic, but do you see what I'm saying, is how things happen in your life mold you to the system that you may, or belief systems that you may have. Economic values. People sharing the same ethnic heritage may have similar values and beliefs that might differ significantly from beliefs shared by other ethnic groups. People who spent their childhood and early youth in poverty are likely to view the world quite differently than those who grew up with plenty of money. Financial independence is important to these individuals. Why may they refuse to buy medications? Why? Because it's too expensive. Their cost of living in their own mindset is much more expensive because of what they have been brought up to be used to. So it's kind of like prioritizing. Where is your prioritized lay when it comes to financial status? For me, I medications are pretty high. I would rather go without maybe a nicer car or maybe nicer clothes in order to make sure I have my medications. But others may not believe that. They may feel like they have to have a dependable car, and they have to have, they live in an environment where clothes are really a high necessity, and they don't feel like medications are their priority. So it just kind of depends on, or food. It isn't even about that. Sometimes it comes down to eating or paying for medications, and I tell you what, food is going to win because nobody wants to go hungry. That is in itself. And how do you take medications if you're hungry? You know? I mean, but we all know there's different qualities of eating. I grew up financially poor, and I know that there is a difference in between eating, spaghetti and hamburger helper versus eating, beautiful fresh vegetables and you know there is a difference in eating. um so maybe people aren't willing to have that difference or accept help in other cases or resources to help them with their food in order to pay for their medications. That's another thing. Pride has a big significant impact as well. Older adults grew up in a more affluent world and are more likely to value material possessions and spend rather than save. True or false? This is false. Remember, some of these people grew up during the Depression, or they didn't grow up during the Depression, but their parents did. And and whenever you are brought up by parents who went through the Depression, you're pretty, those kind of values. I remember my grandmother who did grow up during the Depression, because my dad, he's quite older. He is, my dad is 75 years old, His mother was 92 when she passed away. So she had him when she was older. He had me when he was older. But anyhow, she grew up in the Depression, and this woman would not throw anything away. Everything had to be rinsed out and used again. Plastic bags, paper towels, even. I mean, she didn't reuse paper towels. I'm not saying that, but if it wasn't completely soaked, or I mean, she kept using it till it was. She was very frugal with money, and they always had a year's supply of food stored. Uh, and she was just very, very they not trusting of banks. So besides having money in the bank, she would have money hidden all over the house. Not very trusting of government in general when it comes to finances because they had this impact on them. And I mean, she was pretty comfortable. I'm not saying that they weren't. That side of the family was very comfortable. But she definitely didn't behave or act like they had any money ever. There was always, she would just be very cautious about wasting food, resources, anything. They reused things until there was no more reusing. It was just kind of part of their way of life. And I found that my dad, and because of that, is very frugal when it comes to things like electricity. Like he prides himself in only having a $20 electricity bill a month. I'm like, why? We're wasteful. He comes over to my house and just shakes his head because he thinks that we're wasteful when it comes to things like electricity. Like you're just blowing money out of the water. Well, he would rather live in a hot, freezing house in the dark, um, which I don't understand. So it's just a difference in generations. But no, they are very likely to be very careful with money. So when you have your elderly suffering from poverty, um, due to inflation, due to lack of social, a lot of times people, like back in the 80s, $1,800 a month was living large, you guys. But if those people that retired in the 80s thinking that $1,800 a month was going to be enough, they're going to be they're going to have a rude awakening right now. Think about it. Could you survive on $1,800 a month? I couldn't. I mean, geez. I mean, that I don't. I guess if I had to, I'd figure out something, but uh, medications would not be my priority. Interpersonal values. Our beliefs and values impact our perception and experience of the world. People tend to have a natural tendency to view their own personal beliefs and values as normal or natural. We are likely to be open and understanding when interacting with individuals and groups who share our views. Isn't that the truth? Like, we don't want to hang out with people who don't share our views, but don't get me wrong. I don't believe you cannot not have friendships or relationships with people who think and have different views. And I mean, I hate talking about it, but politics. Obviously, I have family I love that have different political views than I do or different values than I do. And it doesn't matter. You still love them. You just don't understand them. And that's different. It's a different concept. And it takes a lot of maturity and openness and I guess empathy. Like if you were brought up the way they were brought up and had the experiences that they had, would you feel the same way as them? And sometimes it's really hard to put yourself in their shoes. But oftentimes that's what we need to find ourselves doing to understand why somebody believes the way they do or feels the way they do. Cultural values. Shared cultural values define an authority structure. establish norms for language and communication, and establish a basis for decision making and lifestyle choices. I don't know. I feel like, you know, like if you're talking about race necessarily, I feel like financially or decision making or lifestyles can be on all spectrums. Um, but for the most part, cultural values can do have a lot of impact on health. Our foods we eat that we tend to eat more of, are they healthier? Are they not healthier? Um, our relationships with our families, are they strong? Are they weak? Those can all impact health as well. A heterogeneity of cultures creates a vibrant and dynamic society, but also creates many opportunities for prejudice and misunderstanding. Amen. Many older adults have lived in this country for years, but still identify more with their ethnic group or country of origin than with the dominant society. Yes. Why have some sociologists defined America as a fruit salad rather than a melting pot? It's because we are more culturally aware. We keep our own identities and our own cultures, but and they don't tend to mix. They could be in the salad, but they don't mix and melt together necessarily. New immigrants experience periods of culture shock when entering new cultural environments in which their traditional values and practices differ from those of the dominant culture. Spiritual religious values. Spirituality is based on a recognition that there is a relationship between the person and a transcendent supreme being, life force, ultimate reality, or undefined something that is greater than ourselves. These beliefs give meaning to life and to all positive and negative experiences that occurs during a lifetime. Now, that's not necessarily everybody's religious or belief system. Like, I don't believe that. I mean, I do believe, obviously, I mean, as most people, I'm Christian. I don't believe, I do believe God has the power, but I don't believe God is the reason for all that has happened, good in my life or bad in my life. I believe he has the power to adjust it, and if he does, I'm grateful. But but I don't believe he is the reason. So it's kind of a balance on that because I feel like if you put everything in the power of God, it takes away your own ambition to do it for yourself. Um, and that's where I conflict with a lot of people. So, it's like I believe it's important to have a belief in a higher power because it's comforting to know that there is somebody there that can help you, right? And there is comfort in knowing that you will be able to see your loved ones at one time later when, in the afterlife. There is some comfort in all of this. And how does this impact, end of life care? If somebody believes that there is a heaven, the family is a lot more, they're sad, they're going to miss them, but they don't believe they're never going to see them again. Whereas if they don't believe in a afterlife or in a higher power, they believe this is it, that's it, you're going into the dirt and no more. I mean that's that's going to have a whole different mourning process. You see what I'm saying? So you have to take into somebody's spiritual and religious beliefs and understand what their religion portrays. And I was kind of which religions do believe in an afterlife and which religions don't. Like, I know that Jehovah's Witness, they don't believe in an afterlife. That's it. You're never going to see that person again. That's it. Another one is Seventh day Adventist doesn't believe in an afterlife. So, being aware of those cultural or religious differences will help you understand their grieving process. Many of today's older adults are raised in an organized religion that played an important role in the formulation of their values and beliefs. Audience response system question 2. Sociologists have suggested that because the United States is made up of many different and unique peoples mixed together, it should be called the answer is B, fruit salad. Okay, so objectives. Describe methods of assessing beliefs and values. Identify older adults at risk for experiencing problems related to values and beliefs. Identify selected nursing diagnoses related to values or beliefs. And describe nursing interventions appropriate for older individuals who are experiencing problems related to values and beliefs. What is a person's cultural background? What does the person have any specific Does the person have any specific cultural or religious beliefs related to health? Is religion or belief in a deity a significant factor in the person's life? Does the person attend religious service regularly? What is the person's religious denomination, sect, church, or so on? Does the person have a preferred spiritual counselor? Does he or she see this person regularly? And is the person interested in talking to a priest, minister, rabbi, or other spiritual advisor? What religious books or symbols are meaningful to the person? And has aging or illness had an impact on the person's beliefs, values, or spiritual practices? I think one of the things that you really want to know about a patient is, I'm taking care of you. How do I incorporate your spiritual wellness while I'm doing so? So if you are Jewish and you eat a kosher meal, I need to make sure that you come up with kosher food. We make sure there's no milk and meat served on the same plate. Um, there's other practices. If you are Muslim and you need to have a Quran and within eyesight of you, and I need to respect your belief system on modesty and another thing about Muslim is that if they're a woman, they can only be cared for by other women. And actually men too. Men cannot be cared. They tend to only want to be cared by women as well. So be aware of that. So a nursing diagnosis could be spiritual distress. Nursing goals and outcomes is identify and verbalize sources of value conflicts, specify the spiritual assistance desired, discuss values and beliefs regarding spiritual practices, and express feelings of spiritual comfort. Nursing interventions is determine whether there are special spiritual practices or restrictions. Like, I know the LDS religion, they have to wear garments. And let me tell you, garments are not like, they're not special underwear or whatever. But what they are there for is to keep the patient modest and also protected. They believe that these garments will protect them. And so it's not an absolute, like if they're in surgery, they could take the garments off. But otherwise, they do prefer to wear them. Um, and so keeping in mind that when you're doing your assessment, you may have to assess around the garments. Okay. And that's something that you need to, just be mindful of. Um, Identify significant persons who provide spiritual support. Like some people have preachers and ministers and bishops and rabbis, and I mean, we need to know who is how do we refer to the leader of your church organization. Now, it may be a chaplain. We do have, usually, there is a church chaplain, okay, and they are very aware of the local religion um, uh, around the county. So, like, if we have a patient that is of a certain religion and wants to speak to their bishop or their minister or whatever, we let the chaplain know, and the chaplain will counsel with the patient and also let their chaplain or let their minister know, and we could do a referral, a religion referral. Determine whether there is any way that the nurse can aid older adults in meeting their spiritual needs. Provide opportunities for the person to express spiritual needs and concerns. Determine spiritual objects that have meaning to the person. Attain these objects if possible. Provide opportunities for spiritual guidance with due respect for privacy. And encourage contact with a spiritual counselor in times of crisis. So, severe grief can result in questioning of A, spiritual values, B, family relationships, C, health needs, or D, cultural beliefs. The answer is A, spiritual values. Oftentimes, people who are going through severe grief process will wonder, um, you know, they'll be angry basically with the deity of their belief system, and so that tends to question their spiritual value. All right, guys, so that's the end of this chapter. Pretty quick, huh? And please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and you can email me, or you can text me, or work in our group chat. Okay.